What's going on? I hope you're doing well. I'm excited about today because I want to talk about curiosity and how I think it's a superpower and it might even be the antidote. And I'm going to talk about all that and get into it here in a second. But had a great day recording this right on the heels of going to my very first ever Porsche Club of America cruise, rally, meeting, hangout, whatever you want to call it. Met up with a whole bunch of folks here in Nashville. We cruised out to this restaurant through some really cool back roads and everything. It was a great time. It was a beautiful day. Man, the difference in the seasons and the way that spring hits after a dreary winter has just got my spirits lifted and I'm feeling great. But I'm also feeling great because in that setting with all those people that I've never met before, I literally went there knowing zero people. The the superpower that I had leveraged and the antidote to social anxiety that I leveraged was curiosity. And it's as simple as just approaching someone, introducing yourself, and then asking them questions. Just being genuinely curious about other people. And that works really well in social situations, even if you're somebody that's a little. I love the feeling of social situations if I know people, but I'm really hesitant of social situations if I don't know anyone. I just find it a bit nerve wracking. But to be able to just walk up to someone and start talking to them, especially if there's anything you have in common, like I was there for a car thing, I was able to introduce myself, ask someone what car they had, ask them questions about it. Just genuinely being curious is a beautiful thing. And I'm going to spin this forward a little bit. Maybe I'll even drop some of that footage in here, or I'll probably just make a different video about the Porsche cruise at the PCA meeting. But that'll be separate from this. I think I want to focus on in this video something very specific. You know, we did this cruise. We ended up at this restaurant. We're a very large group, so people are getting seated at tables of like 4 to 8 people. There's probably 50 or 60 people there, so I end up kind of coming in on the back end here and getting seated with two people that I had talked with briefly during the morning, but didn't know, had never met them before other than meeting them this day. They had a Pakistani background, and it was wonderful. Like I felt like I could have talked to this couple for probably, good grief, a week, a month. I had so many questions, just not just about their culture, which we didn't even get into. We talked about cars, we talked about life, we talked about travel, we talked about all kinds of things. I even, they saw that I had a camera with me. They asked if I did any kind of content. I mentioned the channel that my wife and I do together, as well as this channel, and said they could view some of the car content here. But I also had to tell them I also do some whiskey and the word content where, I'm talking about Jesus. And, I'm a Christian, but more than a Christian, I got to give my friend Mark Lang a shout out for this. More than a Christian, because that entails a lot of social baggage with it. I'm a Jesus guy. That's what I'm about. But I can also sit down and I don't actually know what their religious background is, or if they even have religious background. I'm not sure. We didn't get into all that. I just mentioned that there was some content like that on the channel, and we had a brief conversation as part of a larger conversation about how it's a shame that people they don't even feel like they can talk about religion because it just triggers people. And I feel like we should all be able to talk about anything that we want to talk about. And this is where the curiosity comes in. It doesn't matter what someone is into. As long as they're not hurting other people, I'm going to be curious. And honestly, like if you look at true crime out there, a lot of people are really curious about why people hurt other people. So there's like a whole niche cottage industry rather that keys in on why people do things to other people that are bad. But like, why are we not curious and taking our time to figure out the good in other people or what makes other people unique? And we don't all have to agree. That's the beauty of all of this. It's, I think the algorithm and the social media echo chamber has taught people how to talk at each other, but it has done a really poor job of fostering actual social connection and learning how to talk with people. And this is one of those things that I think is so important. So anyways, I'm going to talk about a specific verse. I've talked about it before. I'm going to talk about it again. The gospel really isn't that difficult when you break it down, but there's a lot to learn. I'm going to make an application here. Also going to have a little sip of Old Forester 1920, 115 proof from Brown-Forman. There's talk about them being acquired by Sazerac, the same company that owns Barton 1792 and Buffalo Trace. Who knows if that's going to go through or not. But I was curious about this bottle because I purchased a couple of bottles a few years ago, back to back, that both were not very good at all. But my curiosity got the better of me, and I came back around to buying another one of these. And I actually really, really like this bottle. It actually is very good. And for the money, which in our market's about $65, it's really nice. So I'm going to warm my palate up. I'm going to talk about a specific scripture here in a second. In Matthew 22, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, 22:30. Yep. Matthew 22, 36 through 40. So we'll get to that here in a second. But I'm going to have a sip of this. I'm going to talk a bit more about curiosity. We're going to read this verse. So cheers, y'all. Ooh. That smells like boozy banana bread and milk chocolate. And that delivers on the palate. First sip of the day, 115 proof, is coming through with a fair bit of spice and heat. Not so much that it's unenjoyable, but I just know from personal experience, my palate's going to have to get acclimated to this. And by the way, if you are newer to whiskey and you're wondering, like, how do people drink this stuff without ice or anything like that? You know, neat in a glass, without water, nothing to mix in it. Baby sips are your friend. Like, sip this like you would sip hot coffee. Just the littlest sip, just to get it on your palate. And then I actually hold it in my mouth for a couple of seconds before I swallow it, just because then it kind of, it's almost like it gets a little diluted in there, and that brings out more flavors as it sits, and then it makes it a little bit more, you acclimate more to it before you actually take the sip. Yeah, second sip, the spice is taming down. More of the oak barrel char, the vanilla from the oak barrel, and the barrel char is coming through on that. That is really good. Like, I was 2 bottles out that were not great. They had kind of a nail polishy type of note in them that I did not like. This, it's not that note isn't in here, but it's not very prominent. It's very mild, the way the ethanol comes through. It's not coming through in like a chemical way, like those 2 bottles that I got back probably in 2022 and 2023. I took 2024 and 2025 off of Old Forester 1920. But 2026, we back, baby. We back. So I am going to buy another bottle once this bottle's gone. I'm going to keep one of these around until they start letting me down again. But that's whiskey. It varies. It changes over time. But I'm going to stay curious. I'm going to keep tasting things. I'm going to stay curious about God, and I'm going to keep learning about Him. I'm going to stay curious about Jesus and keep learning about Him. And I'm going to stay curious about other people, even if, and almost especially if they are different from me in any way whatsoever. And guess what? Everybody's different from me because everybody's unique. So I want to read this verse in Matthew 22, chapter 22, verse 36. It says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments." Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, husbands, I'm going to help you here. Maybe I'm going to help some wives too. I'm just going to help any human being that's breathing right now. You're going to have disagreements with people. You're going to have conflict with either strangers or close loved ones or friends. You're going to have things in your life that come up where you don't see eye to eye with someone. There's a saying that goes, seek first to understand and then to be understood. And I can promise you, if you're curious about the other person and what they're feeling, or the other person and what they're thinking, get yourself out of the way and don't focus on yourself so much, but look at the other person and try to understand them. Be curious about why they're reacting the way they're reacting, curious about why they're feeling the way they're feeling. And if you lean into that curiosity, it is an antidote for arguments to keep them at bay. You're going to build deeper relationships. You're going to get to know more people. You're going to have much better friendships. Just be curious. Be curious. I think you would say, if you're watching this, that if you were talking to someone, you would really appreciate if they took the time to try to understand you. Either what you thought, if you're talking about a specific point, or if you meet someone in a social situation, if they genuinely are curious about who you are and they're talking to you in that way, it makes an impression. Because a lot of people don't do this. We're so, again, we've become so accustomed to talking at each other without talking with each other. And curiosity is the thing to fix it. So stay curious. And if you're seeking to understand someone else while they're also seeking to understand you, it's going to solve a lot of relational problems that you might have in your relationship or your marriage. It's going to solve a lot of problems you might have with your kid. Like, instead of talking down to your kid, try to understand why they feel the way they feel. That's going to go a long way in letting them feel like they're heard. And then you can express yourself and you can teach them this same principle. And then they can understand why you're doing things you're doing as a parent. Like, I tell my daughter all the time, I would not be a good parent if I didn't do this. And I know you don't like what's happening right now. You don't like the consequences of your actions, but I have to, like, this is a lesson that is important for you to learn. So we're going to have these consequences, or we're going to have to not do the thing that we were going to do because something else happened. It's teaching her to be curious about why we're making the decisions we're making solves a lot of parent-child issues. Not all, but a lot. And just in social situations, I saw it play out today. In social situations, I didn't meet everybody there, but I probably met over half the people there. I probably met 30 people today. Terrible with names. I don't remember probably half of the people I met, but I remember a lot of the people I met. They made an impression on me because they were genuinely curious about, hey, here's a new guy. Hadn't seen him around before. Who are you? Which car is yours? How did you get into this? How did you find that? What do you think about this, that, whatever? The genuine curiosity is just, it almost short circuits the algorithmic abscess that has become the cancer of so many online places, to where people are just leaning into discourse for fun. Like, that is not a fulfilling way to live life. So I just want to encourage you, love God, love others, be curious about God, be curious about others, even if it's something you don't agree with. If you're watching this video and you're like, I don't know about all this God stuff, get curious about him. Get curious about Buddha. Get curious about Muhammad. Just be curious. Be curious about others. And if you can start doing that, and it's one of the coolest things in the world, because you'll start to recognize when other people are doing that with you as well. And it really stands out. It really stands out. So I think we all want to be understood. And I think the best way to do that is if you're seeking to understand. So I'm going to leave it there today. I appreciate you tuning in. I'll be back next week or next time, whenever that is, with some more content and whatever's on my mind. Seasons is on my mind. Curiosity is on my mind. Cars are on my mind. Whiskey's on my mind. All this stuff is on my mind. So we'll see what we get into next time. Cheers, y'all.